Well, we've been seeing a lot of these big, bright red patches of flowers blooming along the side of the road. And a lot of people already know that those are Indian paintbrush, but they are just gorgeous. And they've been pretty for about 3 weeks now. We're on the tail end of it. Now, Indian paintbrush are native wildflowers, and they're actually semi-parasitic. They grow a lot in fields with grasses, and their roots will reach out and then tap into grass roots. And so to transplant these is not a good idea, and it's not a good idea to transplant any wildflower, but when you try to transplant the Indian paintbrush, it just dies because it doesn't have its companion plants. Now, what you see here, these bright red places that look like the flower, are actually bracts, and the flowers really are kind of inconspicuous. Kind of reminds me of how poinsettias. The bright red part that we see is just the bract, and the actual flower is right here. But these are just gorgeous right now, and they've been these big splotches of red. Well, we also have some others here. We kind of have a red, white, and blue theme going. Daisy fleabane is another one that's blooming a lot right now, and these tiny little daisies that are growing here, these are often growing in kind of fields or disturbed places, and they can get anywhere from about 1 to 4 feet tall. So you might see these growing along the side of the road right now, and they've just kind of started blooming, so we'll have a nice extended season on those. Now, another one that's very common in disturbed places in the prairie is the toad flax, and it has the little blue flowers on it. Now, I've got another blue flower that I want to show you that's right over here. Now, this little wildflower is actually just on the tail end of its bloom, but it's probably one you've been seeing here for several weeks now. You can see here we've got this nice little blue flower. It's called blue-eyed grass. And we've got the blue and then just a hint of yellow that really makes it stand out when it's in full bloom. Now, it's a kind of a clumping flower. You can see here how it grows in a clump. And it's in the iris family. So it is related to all of the iris. And as you look at the foliage, you can kind of tell it looks very similar. It's got kind of that strap or lance-like leaf here, and grows in this clump. Now, it does like less disturbed spots. It likes kind of a stable area to grow in, and it's a short one, so you're going to see it down closer to the ground. Well, this is kind of some of our red, white, and blue theme, but we've also got some yellow flowers over here. And if you're interested in learning more about wildflowers, you'll want to go to the Wildflower Workshop that's next weekend, May 21st and 22nd in Stillwater. Now, the registration was due by May 14th. However, there is registration at the door. You just may not get to eat. And if you want more information, just call 405-521-4037. Well, of course, one of the yellow flowers that actually is a really pretty flower for us is the dandelion here. Of course, it's not very pretty when you have it in your lawn, but along the side of the road, it makes a very nice show. But there's another yellow flower that's blooming right now that you might be seeing, and that is the false dandelion. Here you can see just how pretty that is. Now, it's a lighter color than the regular dandelion, and it's got a longer stem. But then as you look down at the base, you can see how the leaves look very much like the dandelion. Now, there's another yellow flower out here, and let me show you. It's just right, let me see where it is. It's right over here. And it looks very similar to that too. And this is actually called a goat's beard. And you can kind of tell the difference between it and the false dandelion because you can see how the petals are here, and then we have these long green spikes coming out from the flower, and kind of makes it look like a star. And the other thing that you notice is that there's actually foliage here along the stem. And so that's how you can tell the difference between the goat's beard and the false dandelion. Now, the goat's beard is kind of like a sunflower. It opens in the morning and it kind of follows the sun until mid-afternoon, and then it closes up. So if you're looking for the goat's beard, you'll need to look for it in the morning. And the other thing about the goat's beard is, you know, as you're driving along the side of the road and you see those gigantic looking puffballs that look like really big dandelions, well, this is the plant that makes those big puffballs. So you can tell your friends that, oh, those aren't dandelions, those are goat's beard. And these are just a few of the flowers that you might be seeing right now. And we've also got some flowers that make nice transitions into the perennial garden that we're going to go take a look at.
Well, one of our native wildflowers that makes a wonderful addition to the perennial garden is blooming right now, and that is our blue false indigo. You might see it listed as wild blue indigo, but it is absolutely gorgeous right now. This plant, you can see here, we have these wonderful 8 to 10 inch spikes of blooms, and you can see here that it's in the pea or legume family, and it also has a wonderful bluish green foliage on it, and this makes a really pretty plant. Now the growth habit on this, you can see how the stalks are very kind of upright growing, and then they kind of spread out so that the entire plant has kind of a vase-like shape, and it makes a nice mound. Now this is an herbaceous perennial, so it will actually die back down to the ground every year and then come up in the spring, and it blooms around May. Now this one has actually been in this spot this is the 3rd season now. We planted it and it didn't bloom the first year, actually as part of our xeriscape garden. It didn't bloom last year, however this year it started blooming, and it's one of those plants that if you're patient, it's going to get better every year. Now it can grow anywhere from 36 to 48 inches tall when it's mature, so you're going to need to leave some space around it. It also likes full sun or partial shade, so it's a very versatile plant, and it is drought tolerant. It also can grow on poor soil because it is a legume. It manufactures its own nitrogen, and it likes the soil to be slightly acidic. So it's a very good plant for a perennial bed that doesn't need a lot of care because there's not much that bothers this once it's established. Now, one thing about false indigo is that once you plant it, it's not going to need divided, and it really doesn't like to be moved. So you'll want to plan your planting spot well because it has a long taproot, which helps make it drought resistant. However, it makes it not like to be moved very much. The other thing is that you don't want to go out and find this growing in the wild, dig it up, and bring it into your perennial garden. You should never do that with any wildflower. However, you can start it from seed. There are several companies that sell wildflower seed and several nurseries that actually sell wildflower plants that they have started from seed that you can plant in your own garden. So I would definitely recommend planting some false indigo in your garden and being patient because you will be very well rewarded. Well, another one of the wildflowers that makes a wonderful transition to the perennial garden are the wildflowers in the evening primrose family. Now, they actually have several different cultivar species and genera, some which are native to this area and some that aren't. However, they do look beautiful in the perennial garden. Now they have kind of a crepe papery flower and usually come in shades of pink or yellow. Now the most common one, the showy evening primrose, we see planted a lot. And you can notice by this planter box how the plant can actually be rather invasive. It grows anywhere from 1.5 feet to 2 feet tall, and it rapidly spreads out. It is a very beautiful flower, however, and if you want to combat that invasive quality, there's something that you can do about that. Now here, we actually have some planted in small pots. Now this is another cultivar. This is siskiyou, and you can see here that it's a bright pink instead of the kind of pinkish white color. And it's been planted in a pot, and it's doing very well. And we'll have some beautiful primrose flowers flowering on this for a couple of months. This one is woodside white, and the nice thing about some of the primrose, they actually open up white, and as the flowers age, they turn pink. And that's kind of the opposite of a lot of plants. A lot of plants will open up with brilliant color, and as they age, they kind of bleach out. And this starts out white and then ages to the pink. So these are some very nice selections, and again, if you want to combat that invasive problem that we can have with the primrose, then put them in some pots. Now we've got a primrose in the rock garden that I want to show you that actually isn't invasive. Well, many of the plants in the evening primrose family actually can take pretty harsh conditions. They like hot, dry sites and like to be planted in full sun. So they're good candidates for some of those spots that are hard to fill because you can't find anything else to grow there. So you've got a spot between the sidewalk and the wall that's on the south or west side. An evening primrose might be a good candidate. Now, here in our rock garden, we actually have one of the yellow types. This is a Texas primrose, and while the other primrose that we saw were in the Oenothera genus, this is actually the Callilophus genus, but it's still in that primrose family. And you can see here we have these beautiful yellow, again, kind of crepe papery looking flowers. And this plant actually has a much narrower leaf to it. You can see here it has more of a kind of a bush habit to it, and it doesn't spread out and take over like the showy evening primrose does. So this is a nice, well-behaved plant. Now here we have it in the rock garden, so it does have very good drainage, and it's up here on the hill. So we get the full west sun in the evening, and it's up against a rock, and you can see it doesn't really bat an eye at being in this harsh position. Now, an evening primrose, again, is a good candidate for a spot that's hard to fill, but if you pick one that is a little bit invasive, you might want to contain it in a pot.
We hope you've enjoyed this classic from the Oklahoma Gardening Vault. Remember, even though these tips and techniques are timeless, there's always something new to learn in the world of gardening. By subscribing to both Oklahoma Gardening and OK Gardening Classics, you'll have access to a wealth of gardening knowledge, both classic and contemporary.